What's going on, everybody? Patrick Auger here with the illustrious, the magnificent. Look at that mustache with the DX in the background, Drake Riggs. And if you haven't heard already, sounds like they're trying to line up Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega March 27th for the second UFC pay-per-view of that month. So this is going to be the co-main event, it sounds like. It's going to be under Stipe versus Ngannou if all the fights can be made. This is a big one. This is Ortega's redemption, so to speak, after, coming back and putting on that brilliant performance against Korean Zombie. He's straight back into a title shot. Drake, is this the right matchup? Does this make sense?
The only reason that I struggle with it is because he's only won one fight since then. That's the only thing for me as somebody who, pretty purist mentality and everything. I like to see people really earn their shots and everything. But then you look at who he beat, and it was the guy who could have arguably got a title shot at that time too. So it's like, I'm pretty fine with it. It just feels funny, but I'm not as mad at it as I would be if it was like somebody coming off a loss or something stupid, So this is and it's a great matchup. And seeing how Ortega looked in that fight, it's like, yeah, I'm very, very intrigued by it. I like it. Just looking at the only other person that you could say is maybe close would be Zabit, I guess, but where is he? Where's Zabit? It's like, where's Waldo? I don't know where the guy is right now. So he's out of the picture at the moment as far as I'm concerned. And then we still have question marks about him. I think he should fight in a 5-rounder before he gets a title shot, but that's a whole nother story. So essentially, Pat, yes, I think Ortega is pretty much the only option here unless Holloway gets starched tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's, we're on the eve of Holloway versus Qatar, and it's very possible that Calvin goes in there and pulls off a major surprise and knocks out Holloway, and in which case it's very hard not to argue that he deserves the title shot. But since that fight is recent, and I highly doubt that's going to happen. I think regardless of how that fight goes, winner's probably going to need a little bit of time off. I doubt they're going to be able to just hop in there in 2 months. So I'm not mad at it at all, especially given what Ortega was able to do to the Korean Zombie, who, as you mentioned, could have even had a title shot off of his recent run. And what Ortega did to him in there, it was a clear, decisive victory. No arguments, not that close. And he looked reborn. People want to talk about the MMA legends of Sea-Level Kane and hair salon quality Dustin Poirier.
Motivated pen.
Yeah, motivated pen.
Chuck that look in his eye.
Exactly. And now you've got the opposite of salon quality Dustin Poirier, in that he's taken those locks, chopped them off. He's bald Ortega, and he's out here looking like a beast. So I think it's the right matchup. It makes sense. It is fresh. It's one of those things, though, that I have to bring this up because we talked about Holloway versus Qatar as well. If Holloway gets past Qatar, there was a lot of people saying, including Max, oh, I got robbed. I won that fight. Judges got it wrong in the second Volkanovski fight. If Ortega gets past Volkanovski somehow, then you got to give, and Holloway gets past Qatar, does that mean Holloway gets another shot at the belt? Does he get another shot at Ortega? Because Holloway clearly beat Ortega in their first match. So it could have huge ramifications if Ortega ends up winning this fight.
I mean, that's what Max wants. Max is totally rooting for Ortega to get the win in that fight. And then if he wins, of course, he's in. That pretty much sets it up. And I'm very curious about how that rematch would go, just considering what we saw from Ortega in that last fight. I was super excited for that first fight, dude. That was one that I was really, like, in the last 5 years, that's one that stood out to me a lot, is one I was very hyped to see. And Didn't quite end up being as competitive as I hoped it would have been, but it was still fun to watch for what it was, the performance and everything. Yeah, if Max wins and Ortega wins, it depends again. Then it would depend on Zabit, right? He's the only other guy right now, and I would imagine whenever Emmett's available to come back, because he's probably thinking off the top of my head here, don't have the rankings up. He'd be the next guy. Maybe you catch them two up, or mix in Cater some way there. But then he actually lost his beat in 2019. Wasn't that long ago, which is crazy to see how he's rattled off these great wins since then, and now he's in position here for this Holloway one. And for Max though, getting the win and then Ortega getting the win and setting up that rematch, it's like, well, what if Max loses that one? If he loses that one, then he's already in a bad spot right now where, like, if Volkanovski, as long as he's champion, you feel like he's going to have to put in some serious work now to get back to a title shot. Similar to think Joseph Benavidez getting his rematch with Demetrius. What, did he have to win 5 in a row? Like 5, 6 maybe. I don't know. It was at least 5. I know that much. So, and different circumstances, of course. The fights were closer with these two that we're talking about at featherweight, but he's just in a weird spot where so close to being around the title, but losses, and 1 and 3 in his last 4 at the moment. If he gets the win, then that just makes it 2 and 4. Like, still not that pretty on paper, but of course, when you really examine things, not bad. It's not bad considering how they played out and everything. It's probably what would happen for sure, because looking at the business standpoint and everything, as I'm sure you'll get into here in a moment, Pat, as you do, Holloway arguably still the biggest name at featherweight, right? I mean, he probably is. Aldo's gone now. Even then, you could have argued maybe Holloway's got a big fan base. He's very popular, and a guy who's had all this time to build that up, and the UFC loves him just in general. So it wouldn't at all be surprising for them to do that, whether it should or shouldn't happen. I understand all arguments in that case, and just how much you could sell that one, probably more than the initial fight, which was very, very easy to sell. Incredibly easy to sell that one. We were so hyped for it. Had to wait longer than we hoped to because it got canceled the first time for a reason I don't remember. It was a while ago now. But a rematch with Ortega as champion and the changes he's made, geez, that would be too easy not to do that as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it would be, it would make way too much sense, again, from a business standpoint. And I'm glad you brought it up, the popularity, because we have kind of done a typical flip where we might talk about this towards the end. We've brought it to the beginning of the discussion. But another factor here about the actual fight is Volkanovski doesn't get a lot of love, right? He simply hasn't gotten a lot of love. He's been kind of that underdog, out there in the background, like, yeah, he's champ, but people aren't really clamoring around him, even though he definitively beat Max Holloway and had a great run up to get the title. And he definitively beat Max Holloway in the first fight. The second one, that's closer. I could see it either way. I've watched it several times. There's arguments there depending on how you want to judge. But in that initial run, people didn't give him much of a chance. He goes out there, he puts on that show. He gets another win against Holloway, albeit a little bit more controversial, but still a win. And it's very hard to argue that it's a robbery by any means. And people still, haven't seemed to give him the credit that he's due. He's the training partner of Israel Adesanya, who the UFC is trying to push, and who has a drawing power that's getting towards the level of, it's not there yet, but it's getting towards the level of Conor McGregor and, what Jorge Masvidal was able to do recently before other things he's done, and now all of a sudden that's gone. But the point is, you would think it would make sense for the business to push Volkanovski harder, because they can say, like, look at City Kickboxing, look at Volkanovski training with Adesanya, and how much actual training they do, what have you, but put him in a piece of any type of media of those two, fake sparring, what have you. Let's push him, and yet it seems like he's just an afterthought. And it begs the question in this fight, is Ortega the A side here to the champion Volkanovski? Because that's something that I've kind of been going back and forth on.
He might be. He very well might be. It's funny just to touch on everything that you just did right there. Is like Volkanovski. I think he's grown to be pretty popular where he's from. Right, Australia and that area. He's definitely turned into a pretty decent sized star. But that feels about it. Not much love elsewhere. And just you look at how the UFC has promoted this Holloway Cater fight. Is pretty much they're saying that Max is the uncrowned champion, right? It's pretty much like, holy shit, slap him in the face there. It's pretty brutal. The funny thing is for Ortega and Volkanovski, I'm sure that they'll be like, Volkanovski, the rightful champion. They'll totally sell it in reverse, which why wouldn't you, right? That's just how it goes. But I lost the original thought now. What was the question there?
Is Ortega the A side?
The A side, yes. Well, he did have some Modelo commercials. He's got plenty of those with his hair before. He was quite popular leading up to that. He grew a pretty good fan base and everything. He's got the the Spanish speaking market in his back pocket as well. Just a pretty likable guy in most people's eyes, I think, and a very entertaining fighter. But I feel like that has dropped off so much so since, he lost the Max fight. Like, you don't hear much buzz about Ortega anymore, even after this big win. Like, it was surrounding him, after the fight happened and everything. But again, it's pretty silent, at least from what I've seen and everything. Is he, even despite that though, I think you could say overall, he's probably more of the A side than Volkanovski. I don't want to say by a lot. If this was undefeated Ortega, I'd probably say, yeah, for sure, 100% it's not that close. But everything considered at the moment, I still give him the edge, but not by a whole lot.
Yeah, it's tough for me. It's on when you look at it globally, right? Because I'm sure, as you mentioned, in Australia, he's grown quite popular. Just similar to what Whitaker did, right? Like, Volkanovski has certainly earned his regional fan base and is big there. And I've met the guy and had a very brief interview with him. He's very likable. I think he's got a lot of qualities where he can be sold the right way. It just feels like the business isn't pushing him in the way that you would expect. Because as you mentioned, I would say, that there's a solid chance that, especially since Volkanovski versus Ortega is the co-main, that Holloway versus Qatar is going to have more push behind it than Volkanovski versus Ortega when all is said and done. And so let us know in the comments if you think we're on the money with this, that, Ortega might actually be more of the draw here. If it's Volkanovski and we're off, like, let us know how you feel about it for sure. But in terms of the actual matchup, Drake, let's talk about the fight itself. We've talked about all the elements outside. Let's get down to the meat and potatoes. With this matchup, how do you see this one going?
It's tough, man. This is a very, very tough one because Volkanovski, he kind of, for me, he's been a guy that I've counted out a bit more than I probably should have. Like, the Aldo fight, I'm pretty sure I picked Aldo against him. The Holloway fight, I picked Holloway in the first one. Second fight, I picked him after that because brilliant performance at the first fight. I'm sure I wasn't alone in the majority on that side. But he's kind of been a guy to, I think, overperform when the expectations are low on him, which were probably in those cases, in most people's opinions, right? So in this one, I could see the same thing happening again, where he goes out there and outperforms and we underestimate him a lot, and he does just incredibly well. And it's a similar matchup to Holloway in the sense of body types. Like, he's fighting a big, long guy. Ortega and Holloway are probably two of the longer, lankier guys, along with Zabit, of course. But Volkanovski, as proven in the Holloway fights, is not much of a problem. Not enough of a problem to, dominate him or make him struggle significantly, right? To where he's not in the fight. Against Ortega, though, the thing with him is he is a lethal finisher everywhere now. Even though he didn't finish Zombie with his striking, I think that he, is still very capable of putting people away with strikes, and we have seen him put people away with strikes. I mean, I guess just Clay Guida and Thiago Tavares, but still, he looks so good in the striking there. You don't even have to say anything about his grappling because he's got the edge in that submission threat. It is horrifying how good that man is at snatching up a neck. Like, there were moments, if you look back at the Holloway fight, where he did, he jumped on some guillotines for very briefly, or like was going for it. He had small windows of opportunity where, like anybody else, that could have been it. Like, that's how dangerous the guy is with his submission ability. And on a smaller opponent like Volkanovski, that could be a problem. If he gets in the clinch and just jumps on his neck, that could very possibly happen. So I don't know. It's hard to tell. And it's just crazy, though, to look at the evolution of, somebody like Ortega, who pretty much his entire run in the UFC up until the Ranky fight, probably maybe the Cub Swanson fight. I don't remember that one too well. No, I remember that one. Up until the Cub Swanson fight, I would say then he was kind of a guy who was the comeback guy. Like he lost the first 2 rounds against everybody, or the first portion of that fight, and then Hail Married it. Like the Guida fight, he was on his way to losing that one and caught him with that knee. I was like, oh man, that sucks so bad for Clay. He looked great in that fight. Guida looked so awesome in that fight and just ate a knee in like the last 30 seconds. That was wild. But now Ortega goes out there and wins every single round against somebody like Zombie in Zombie's area of expertise. Scary thought there. I think it's going to be a very tough matchup for Volkanovski, but he's proven he can adapt as the fight goes on. But the thing also with him is he's not much of a finisher. I don't think he'll pose any real threats to Ortega to where he'll back off and change up his game plan too much, because he's got so many weapons now. And this just falls back in line with me underestimating Volkanovski, but I think I'm going to go with Ortega in the early picks here because he just has so many more weapons that we've seen, at least in terms of their lethality, right? So I give the edge to Brian right now.
Yeah, and oh man, that's it's true, right? It's the evolution of Ortega's striking has really what's allowed him to become so dangerous, because as you mentioned, he was the comeback kid for a while until he really got to Cub. And even then, with Cub, he was able to, get that guillotine, but striking wise, if I remember the fight correctly, Cub was still piecing him up a little bit. It was kind of, like, I've got to do a crazy submission here, or I've got to like land a crazy shot. But the way he's evolved his striking now, it's crazy, especially when you watch the Korean Zombie fight. The strikes he was throwing, the way he was, able to land them. It wasn't just, yes, Korean Zombie gets hit all the time, hence his name. So striking defense is not, a huge thing there. But the way he was landing some of those things, like the spinning, back fist or elbow that, rocked
laser
Zombie.
Jab too.
Yeah, the jab just right through. Like, it showed such an evolution. And then we know, again, how dangerous he is in terms of his submissions. So this is going to be a really good fight, I think. I think it's going to be crazy. Volkanovski is pretty much a decision guy. I think, his last finish was Mendez, right? Where he knocked out Chad Mendez. But other than that, and he did get rocked in that fight too. That's an important thing to note. Volkanovski has gotten rocked. But that being said, Ortega and Volkanovski both have pretty much iron chins. Ortega's chin is ridiculous. The amount of shots he ate where the ref really stopped it more out of...
He didn't go down.
Not so much like, hey, it's over. It's just like unanswered strikes of like, I'm going to save you some immediate CTE and just give you a break. Because that was insanity. But I think this is going to go the full 5 rounds unless Ortega pulls off a crazy submission or lands a big shot and then gets a submission afterwards. But Volkanovski is that guy that I feel like he is constantly underrated or underappreciated because he is very good at a lot of things. Like, And I mean a lot of things. I mean like footwork. I mean takedown entries. He's not, and he doesn't specialize in any particular area. He's a really like high level jack of all trades type of fighter. And I think people sleep on him because of that, because he tends to, again, decision a lot. He'll adjust the game plan as necessary, but he really takes the fight wherever he knows he can win. It's not about getting a finish for him necessarily. It's about winning the fight. So I could see him posing problems for Ortega, but I think Ortega's lethality is really a huge X factor, because at any minute, we've seen it before, he could be down 4 rounds and then he lands some crazy shot or some crazy submission. It's over. So I've got to go Ortega here too. I'm going to say Ortega by a finish, just because, again, we're both definitely just, you know, as much as we said, yeah, we didn't give him enough credit, we're just maybe not doing that again for Volkanovski, and we're saying sorry, man, because the evolution he showed in that zombie fight and his fights up until the Max one, combined with his crazy chin, I think it's going to be, there are going to be too many openings for Ortega to take advantage of. And I don't think Volkanovski is invincible. We've seen him hurt. We've seen him in precarious positions before. You know, Max really made a couple adjustments and made that second fight razor thin. I think Ortega can look at that and say, okay, I know what I got to do here. So going Ortega, but Volkanovski should be the betting favorite. That much I will say. If he's not the betting favorite, then something's wrong. But I'm going to go what I think will be the underdog in Ortega here as well. So with that in mind, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't done that already. Hit the notification button so you can know when we're dropping videos like this right away. Become part of the elite 10%. And with that in mind, Drake, anything else we got to say about this fight?
How long will Ortega's hair be by then, do you think?
Oh, it's a good question. Let us know in the comments. First let us know in the comments who you think is going to win the fight and how they're going to get it done. That's more important. But secondly, and also
is it?
as equally, if not more important, what's Ortega's hair going to look like? You know, who knows, man? Maybe let us know in the comments. Maybe we'll do a video guessing what Ortega's hair might look like. We'll put up some pictures on the screen of
his past haircuts.
What he could potentially. We'll do a couple simulations. Let us know. So, yeah, we can run that for you. Body Lock, high quality content right here.